What would you do if the person you trusted most in your life acted behind your back in a way that could change everything? Imagine waking up to a world that feels familiar, yet completely altered. That's exactly the position Prince Harry found himself in recently. Shocked, blindsided, and forced to confront a secret that had been quietly brewing behind palace doors. For weeks, whispers circulated in the tabloids, rumors that sounded too outrageous to be true. And then, the reality hit. Meghan Markle, the woman he married, the mother of his children, allegedly met with King Charles, alone, without so much as a word to Harry. The gravity of that moment cannot be overstated. It wasn't a casual conversation over tea. It wasn't a quick hello in passing. It was a deliberate, undisclosed meeting that has sent ripples throughout the royal family and beyond. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. The question hanging over everyone now is simple but explosive. Why? Why would Meghan, who has publicly stood beside Harry through every storm, take a step so monumental without including him in the process? Was it strategic? Was it personal? Or was it a calculated move designed to reshape the dynamics of the monarchy in a way only she could envision? For the palace, the implications are seismic. For Harry, the betrayal cuts deep. And for the public, the story reads like something straight out of a drama series, with real-world consequences that nobody could have anticipated. Imagine being Harry. You've navigated the relentless glare of the media, the scrutiny of the press, the endless commentary on every decision you've ever made. You've fought hard for autonomy, for control over your own narrative, and for the safety and privacy of your family. And yet, despite all that effort, you discover a secret meeting that has the potential to undo everything you've worked for. You might wonder, was this an olive branch extended by Meghan to reconcile with the monarchy? Or was it a calculated maneuver to establish her influence, independent of him? The tension is palpable, and the answer isn't simple. To understand why this story matters now, you need to see the broader picture. The monarchy isn't just a family. It's a centuries-old institution with rules, expectations, and traditions that don't easily bend to individual desires. Every move is scrutinized. Every decision echoes beyond the palace walls. When Meghan allegedly sat down with King Charles, she wasn't just having a private conversation. She was stepping into a role that carries immense symbolic weight. She was potentially positioning herself to renegotiate her image, to reclaim influence, or even to re-enter public royal life. On her terms, without Harry's knowledge. That kind of autonomy is rare, controversial, and, in the eyes of many, audacious. Let's be honest, Harry's reaction is easy to empathize with. Who wouldn't feel blindsided if their partner had discussions about major life decisions with your father without telling you? It's the kind of revelation that strains trust, triggers doubt, and forces a person to reevaluate relationships in a flash. And while the palace has mechanisms for managing public perception, the private emotional fallout is far more complicated. Harry is known for wearing his heart on his sleeve, and this moment reportedly left him grappling with disbelief, frustration, and heartbreak simultaneously. But here's the twist that makes this story even more riveting. Meghan's alleged meeting wasn't just about herself. Sources suggest she offered to return to royal life, alone, potentially setting up a scenario where she could negotiate her terms, restore her public image, and even participate in ceremonial events without Harry. Think about the implications. A solo return to the monarchy is unprecedented. It's the kind of development that could spark media frenzy, public debate, and internal palace recalibration, all while leaving Harry out of the initial loop. And it's exactly why this story has ignited so much curiosity, speculation, and, frankly, outrage. Now, you might be wondering, how did this come to light? How did Harry discover what Meghan had done? And what was the palace's immediate response? The answers to these questions are not just about gossip. They reveal the intricate dance of trust, strategy, and personal ambition within one of the most scrutinized families in the world. From emergency calls to late-night discussions in shadowed corridors of Buckingham Palace, the palace has reportedly been navigating a crisis that combines familial tension, public perception, and media scrutiny in ways that are both dramatic and delicate. And then there's the human side of it, the emotional weight. Harry is more than a prince. He's a husband, a father, and a man trying to balance love, loyalty, and integrity. To discover that a partner might have acted independently in a way that could alter your life trajectory isn't just a headline. It's a personal upheaval. It calls into question everything you thought you knew about your relationship and challenges your assumptions about trust, transparency, and mutual respect. The situation is as complicated as it is compelling, which is why we are diving deep into every layer of this story. Let's take a moment to consider the palace dynamics. King Charles, as the head of the family, carries a legacy that stretches centuries. Every action is calculated, every decision weighed against tradition and expectation. If Meghan indeed met with him privately, it raises questions about intent, negotiation, and the potential outcomes for the royal institution. Was this an attempt to broker peace? To establish a path for Meghan's reintegration? Or something more strategic, perhaps to create divisions or reset relationships on her terms? The layers of intrigue are as thick as the velvet drapes lining the palace halls. And what of public perception? The world is watching. Every gesture, every statement, every subtle nuance gets magnified and dissected. Social media amplifies every rumor, every leak, every hint of drama. And in today's environment, the court of public opinion can be as powerful, if not more so, than the traditional mechanisms of royal protocol. Harry must navigate this storm not only for himself, but for the well-being of his family, and the stakes could not be higher. Here's where it gets even more fascinating. Insiders suggest that Meghan's meeting wasn't just a fleeting encounter. It was strategic, deliberate, and potentially transformative. She may have outlined plans to restore her public image, engage with charities or public appearances independently, and position herself as a bridge back into royal life. All while Harry was unaware. The tension between intention and perception is palpable. Was this an act of empowerment, a negotiation, or something more calculated? And how does one weigh ambition against loyalty when the lines are so blurred? So why are we telling you this now? Timing matters. The story is unfolding, details are emerging, and every revelation brings new implications. By exploring the sequence of events, the motivations, and the potential fallout, we can begin to understand not just what happened, but what it means for Harry, for Meghan, for the monarchy, and for the world watching closely. This is more than a story about secrecy. It's a story about power, love, trust, and the delicate balance of personal ambition versus familial loyalty. And while we're only scratching the surface in this introduction, there's much more to come. We'll explore the private moments, the palace reactions, the emotional turmoil, and the strategic calculations that define this unfolding drama. You'll hear what Harry might be thinking, what Meghan might be planning, and how the monarchy is responding behind closed doors. Every revelation builds on the last, creating a narrative filled with suspense, intrigue, and deeply human emotion. But here's the question that will hang over everything we explore. Can a relationship survive such a profound breach of trust? Can the monarchy weather the storm of secrecy and independent maneuvering within its own ranks? And perhaps most importantly, what comes next for Harry and Meghan, whose lives have already been subjected to global scrutiny in ways most people can barely imagine? The answers are complicated, shocking, and will keep you on the edge of your seat. And now, as we step into the heart of this story, remember this. Every detail, every twist, every emotional spike is connected. Nothing is random. The secrets, the meetings, the decisions, they all converge to create a narrative that is as riveting as it is real. So brace yourself, because what comes next will reveal truths, spark questions, and challenge everything you thought you knew about one of the world's most famous couples. And trust me, the first revelation is about to turn everything on its head. But what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. Not everything is as it seems inside the palace walls. On the surface, life appears serene. Manicured gardens, polished halls, ceremonial events, and a carefully curated public image. But beneath the glittering chandeliers and royal protocol lies a world of tension, strategy, and emotions that often rival the drama of any blockbuster movie. And for Prince Harry, the calm before the storm was a fragile illusion. One that would shatter the moment he discovered Meghan's secret meeting with King Charles. Let's start with Harry's world before the revelation. Imagine a man who has spent his entire life in the relentless glare of public attention. Every action, every word, every glance has been scrutinized. For decades, he grew up in a family where appearances mattered as much as actions, and where privacy was a luxury few could afford. Yet, despite the weight of expectation, Harry carved out a path for himself. He became a soldier, a philanthropist, a husband, and a father. He sought normalcy where he could, privacy where possible, and a sense of control over a life that was largely dictated by tradition and obligation. In recent years, Harry and Meghan built a life that balanced royal responsibilities with personal autonomy. They stepped back from official duties, relocated to North America, and sought to define themselves on their own terms. They fought battles publicly and privately, defending their love, their family, and their mental health against pressures most of us can barely comprehend. Yet even in their careful planning, the palace world is never entirely escapable. Every rumor, every minor incident, every unexplained meeting carries potential consequences that ripple far beyond the immediate moment. The calm before the storm was deceptive. Harry believed he understood the boundaries of his world, his relationship with Meghan, the expectations of his family, and the limits of public scrutiny. But the moment he learned about Meghan's meeting with the king, that belief was upended. The storm wasn't coming. It had already begun, quietly, under the radar, and its first strikes would hit him where he was most vulnerable: trust and loyalty. Imagine being Harry at that time. You wake up in your home, a place meant for comfort and sanctuary, only to realize that decisions that could affect your life, your family, and your public image were being made without your knowledge. Meghan, the woman you love, may have just walked into a room with your father, the king, and negotiated terms that could redefine their relationship and hers with the monarchy. Alone, without telling you. The sheer audacity of such a move is staggering. How do you process that? Do you feel betrayal first? Shock? Confusion? All at once. The answers are messy, emotional, and deeply human. But the calm was more than just a personal illusion. It extended to the palace itself. Within Buckingham Palace, there's a delicate ecosystem of roles, hierarchies, and unspoken rules. Advisors monitor, strategists plan, and the royal family navigates centuries-old protocols that dictate behavior both publicly and privately. A secret meeting like the one Meghan allegedly had doesn't just disrupt a relationship, it sends ripples through the entire institution. Staff whisper, media outlets speculate, advisors weigh potential fallout, and every ripple is amplified in the public sphere. The storm that Harry was about to face was institutional as much as it was personal. In the calm before the storm, Harry's days were structured yet deceptively ordinary. He attended public engagements with Meghan, engaged in charity work, and spent time with his children. There was laughter, family dinners, and moments of quiet reflection. But even in these seemingly mundane moments, tension was simmering beneath the surface. The pressures of being constantly observed, the unresolved questions about family loyalty, and the lingering complexities of stepping back from royal duties created a backdrop of uncertainty. The calm was, in truth, a thin veneer. And then, something shifted. The first sign wasn't dramatic, it was subtle. Perhaps a staff member noticed an unusual request from Meghan, or a palace insider hinted at a meeting that had taken place without official notice. Maybe it was a rumor circulating among journalists, or a carefully dropped hint in a trusted circle. Whatever it was, the pieces were quietly aligning, and Harry was unknowingly standing at the edge of a revelation that would test every relationship, every principle, and every expectation he held. Here's where we see the human side of this story. Harry, despite his public image, is a man who values honesty and transparency. He's confronted challenges, attacks, and public scrutiny before, yet the betrayal of being excluded from a momentous decision shakes him differently. It's not just a strategic maneuver, it's deeply personal. And the tension builds when you consider Meghan's possible motives. Was this an attempt at reconciliation with the monarchy, a bid for independence, or a strategic move to regain public favor on her terms? The possibilities are endless, and each carries emotional and political weight. The calm also masks the stakes for the monarchy. A private meeting between Meghan and King Charles isn't just a personal matter. It's a potential pivot point in the ongoing narrative of the royal family. Advisors would have scrambled to assess the implications. How would the public react? How would the media cover it? Would it destabilize existing relationships or create opportunities for strategic alliances? Every aspect of palace life is calculated, and a single undisclosed action can trigger waves of consequences that extend far beyond the walls of Buckingham Palace. And for Harry, the calm was ending not with a bang, but with the slow realization that he had been excluded from a critical conversation. The storm was silent at first, an unexpected call, a whisper of news, a message that seemed benign until it revealed the truth. Imagine the sensation, your entire framework for understanding your life, your marriage, and your family suddenly shifting in a single moment. It's a sensation few can truly comprehend, but the emotional impact is immediate and profound. Even in the midst of this calm, the palace had already started responding. Advisors discussed contingencies, communications teams drafted statements, and the king considered the delicate balance between family, protocol, and public perception. The machinery of the monarchy began moving, quietly but inexorably, in response to a meeting that was meant to be private. And Harry? He was left to process not only the personal implications, but also the institutional ones. The storm was no longer theoretical. It was here, and it demanded attention. To fully appreciate the calm before the storm, we also need to consider the broader social context. Harry and Meghan's lives are inextricably linked to public perception. Every action is scrutinized, every rumor magnified, and every secret has the potential to become global news. The calm is deceptive because, outside the palace walls, the world is already reacting to hints of change, even before Harry fully understands the scope of what's happened. The tension between private reality and public expectation adds layers of pressure that make the eventual storm all the more intense. And yet, in the calm, there's a moment of reflection. Harry likely pondered his journey, the path that led him here, and the challenges he and Meghan have faced together. He may have questioned how trust is built, maintained, and sometimes fractured. He may have wondered how loyalty intersects with ambition, love, and family obligations. These reflections, while deeply personal, set the stage for the emotional intensity of what is to come. But the calm is fleeting. Every indication suggests that Meghan's alleged meeting with King Charles was just the beginning. The ramifications are complex, layered, and far-reaching. As the storm approaches, every decision Harry makes, every conversation he has, and every public statement he delivers will be influenced by this single revelation. And the tension, once subtle, is now unmistakable. And here's the kicker. The calm before the storm isn't just a metaphor. It's real, tangible, and it shapes how the characters in this story react. The storm doesn't arrive with fanfare. It begins quietly, in whispers, in unexpected phone calls, in fleeting glances and subtle gestures. Harry, Meghan, and the palace staff are all bracing for impact, and none of them can predict how it will unfold. But as every storm teaches, the first sign of turbulence is only the beginning. The calm is over, and what comes next will challenge loyalties, redefine relationships, and leave everyone questioning what they thought they knew. For Harry, the personal stakes could not be higher. The palace, the public, and the family dynamics are all at play, and the storm has only just begun. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. A single phone call can change everything. One moment, life feels predictable, stable even. The next, it's upended in a way you never saw coming. For Prince Harry, that call was like a lightning strike, sudden, shocking, and impossible to ignore. He had navigated crises before, media storms, family drama, and public scrutiny. But nothing quite like this. Nothing that hit so close to the heart. Picture the scene. Harry is at home, perhaps in a quiet moment with his children, maybe sipping a coffee or reviewing emails that seemed mundane. Then his phone rings. A number he recognizes, or perhaps a voice that carries weight, urgency, and authority. And in that moment, the world shifts. The message on the other end isn't casual. It isn't small talk. It is information so significant that it demands immediate attention, reflection, and a recalibration of everything he thought he knew. The words hit him like a physical blow. Meghan had met with King Charles. Alone. without telling him. Weeks ago. At first, the brain struggles to process it. Did he hear correctly? Could this be a misunderstanding? But deep down, something tells him it's true. The details are murky, but the implications are crystal clear. Every assumption he held about transparency, trust, and partnership is now in question. The calm he believed he had is gone. Think about that emotional roller coaster. First comes disbelief. How could she do this? Why wouldn't she tell me? Then shock. Did this change anything for our family? Our plans? Our safety? Then, slowly, anger seeps in. Was I being deliberately kept out of the loop? It's a mixture of personal betrayal and institutional complexity, because this isn't just a marital issue. It's a matter that could affect public perception, the monarchy, and family dynamics. Harry's mind races. He starts reconstructing possible scenarios. Did Meghan go in seeking reconciliation? Was it about negotiating terms for a future return to royal life? Did she offer to restore her public image independently, perhaps even positioning herself to participate in ceremonies without Harry? Each possibility is more complicated than the last, and each carries profound implications. The questions multiply, spinning faster than he can answer them. And the palace machinery? Already in motion. While Harry is processing the emotional weight of the call, advisors are quietly calculating every angle. Strategists consider the optics. Staff members scramble to manage potential leaks. Every whisper of the story has consequences, and the pressure is relentless. In that moment, Harry's personal shock intersects with the professional, institutional tension of life within the monarchy. It's a dual storm, the private, emotional upheaval, and the public, political one. The call also brings a personal dilemma. Harry must decide his next move carefully. Does he confront Meghan immediately? Wait for more information? Seek counsel from trusted advisors or family members? Each choice carries risks, emotional, relational, and reputational. And all of it unfolds under the relentless scrutiny of a world watching every move. One misstep could escalate the crisis, turn a personal dispute into a global spectacle, and redefine relationships permanently. Let's pause and consider Harry's emotional landscape. He is known for wearing his heart on his sleeve, for expressing emotion openly and candidly. And yet, this situation demands a careful balance. Public reaction is unavoidable, but private pain is intimate, raw, and consuming. Imagine the tension of sitting in silence, holding a phone, knowing that the news you just received could ripple across continents, yet feeling powerless to control how the story will unfold. What makes this call even more shocking is its secrecy. Unlike a public confrontation, there is no immediate witness, no audience to moderate reactions, no mediator, no script. It is raw, private, and intensely personal. And that's what makes the revelation so volatile. Meghan's decision to meet with King Charles without informing Harry wasn't just a minor lapse in communication. It was a profound disruption of trust, a calculated action that bypassed him entirely. The content of the call is another layer of intrigue. The messenger, whether a palace aide, a trusted insider, or someone closer to the family, delivers not just the fact of the meeting but hints of its purpose and scope. Meghan allegedly proposed a return to royal life, on her terms, independently, and without Harry's immediate involvement. That revelation, in isolation, is enough to provoke shock. But when combined with the secrecy, the timing, and the potential consequences, it becomes explosive. Harry's reaction is a blend of emotions: confusion, anger, sadness, and determination. He has to process the personal betrayal while considering the larger picture. What does this mean for their marriage? For their family? For the monarchy? For his own role as a father and husband? And for the public, watching every move, every statement, every subtle cue? The questions are endless, and the answers are anything but simple. And then comes the critical realization: this isn't just a private issue. The palace hierarchy, advisors, and perhaps even Charles himself will interpret Harry's next steps. How he responds could influence public perception, media narratives, and family dynamics for months or even years. Every reaction is weighted with consequence. One misjudged statement, one emotional outburst, one impulsive decision could escalate a personal issue into a constitutional-level crisis for the monarchy. The emotional intensity peaks when Harry begins to reconstruct the timeline. Weeks ago, Meghan allegedly had this meeting. During that period, Harry had no clue. He had been living life as usual, perhaps thinking all was well, while behind the scenes, a decision had been quietly made that could alter their trajectory. The gap in knowledge. The fact that he was deliberately excluded creates a profound sense of betrayal. And in a palace where perception equals power, being kept in the dark is not just emotionally painful, it's politically significant. But there's another element to consider: motivation. Why now? Why would Meghan choose to meet with the king at this moment? Was it a response to external pressures, media narratives, public opinion? Or was it an internally driven strategy, a way to position herself for influence and visibility independently? Each scenario opens a new avenue of questions, intrigue, and potential conflict. And for Harry, navigating these unknowns is a challenge that demands both emotional intelligence and strategic thinking. The bombshell call doesn't just deliver information, it initiates action. Harry must think fast. Who does he confide in? How does he process the news emotionally while maintaining composure publicly? Does he confront Meghan immediately, or does he gather more intelligence first? Every option has consequences, and none are risk-free. And all of this happens while maintaining the delicate balance of privacy and public scrutiny. Now, let's talk about the human element again. Harry is not just a prince. He is a husband, a father, a son, and a man grappling with betrayal and uncertainty. He has to reconcile love and trust with the reality of deception and secrecy. How does one process the knowledge that someone you love may have acted independently in a way that could alter your life fundamentally? It's not simply about protocol or strategy. It's about intimacy, loyalty, and the emotional bonds that define relationships. Meanwhile, the palace world continues its quiet, deliberate motion. Advisors anticipate public leaks, plan for potential media statements, and weigh the impact of Harry's possible responses. Every decision is considered, every reaction calculated. In this environment, a single phone call can act as a trigger, setting off a cascade of events that are both deeply personal and institutionally significant. By the end of the call, the stage is set. Harry is no longer in the calm of his own life. He is thrust into the center of a storm he never anticipated. The personal stakes are high. The familial dynamics are fraught. The public and media scrutiny is relentless. And every moment from this point forward is a step into uncertainty, fraught with potential for drama, conflict, and revelation. And the tension doesn't stop here. Every word spoken, every action taken, and every decision made in the wake of that call carries weight far beyond the immediate moment. Harry's next moves will ripple through his family, the monarchy, and the world watching. Every observer will be analyzing tone, timing, and choice. Every hidden intention will be speculated upon. And Harry must navigate all of it while grappling with emotions that range from shock to betrayal to determination. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Meghan's actions have always been closely scrutinized, but what she allegedly did in those weeks before Harry discovered the truth was on a whole new level. It wasn't just a meeting. It was a move with strategic precision, a calculated step that has the potential to shift the entire dynamic between Harry, the monarchy, and the public. And the kicker? Harry had no idea it was happening. Let's set the scene. Picture Meghan walking into Buckingham Palace, not as a visitor, not as a guest, but with a purpose. This wasn't a casual conversation over tea. It was an orchestrated, private meeting with King Charles. Alone. No witnesses. No documentation publicly available. No one outside those walls knew. In the world of royal protocol, that's massive. Meetings of that nature are typically communicated, documented, and often involve intermediaries. But this one, allegedly, bypassed all of that. It was Meghan, her intentions, and the king, a rare combination that carried enormous weight. The motivations behind her move are fascinating. Reports suggest Meghan intended to renegotiate her royal image, not with Harry at her side, but independently. Imagine what that entails. She may have sought to reshape public perception, to reestablish trust with the monarchy, and to potentially reclaim roles or ceremonial participation, all without Harry being present to influence, support, or mediate. It's audacious, unprecedented, and for Harry, potentially devastating. Why would she take such a step alone? There are multiple theories. One possibility is that Meghan wanted to demonstrate independence and control. She's always been conscious of her public image, and the decision to negotiate on her own terms could be seen as an effort to assert agency over her life and legacy. Another possibility, she was attempting to create an opening for dialogue that could reintroduce her into royal life while controlling the narrative carefully. Either way, the secrecy is what makes it explosive. Think about the emotional layer here. Harry, who has fought for privacy, trust, and partnership, is now confronted with a situation where his spouse may have acted without his consent on something that could change both their lives. The emotional impact is staggering. Betrayal is a powerful feeling, especially when it comes from someone you love and trust implicitly. Harry's internal struggle would have been intense. Anger, confusion, hurt, and even a sense of helplessness. All of this compounded by the fact that he had to process these emotions while considering the broader consequences for their family and public image. There's also the strategic aspect to consider. A private meeting with the king carries political implications within the palace. Advisors would have taken note, analyzing tone, timing, and intention. Such a meeting could signal reconciliation, ambition, or negotiation, and in royal circles, every nuance matters. The palace is a world of whispers, subtle gestures, and calculated moves, and Meghan's alleged secret meeting disrupted the established equilibrium. It forced everyone to reassess loyalties, intentions, and potential outcomes. One of the most shocking elements of this move is the apparent audacity of her proposition to return to royal duties alone. Think about that. The world knows Harry and Meghan as a couple, a unit navigating the complexities of royalty and independence. For Meghan to offer a solo return, without Harry's involvement, is unprecedented. It challenges the traditional perception of the couple, reshapes expectations, and sets up a scenario rife with both opportunity and controversy. For Harry, it's a revelation that combines personal hurt with strategic uncertainty. And then there's the timing. The fact that this meeting occurred weeks before Harry found out adds another layer of tension. Why now? Why at this particular moment? Was it triggered by external pressures, media scrutiny, public opinion, or internal palace dynamics? Or was it an internally driven strategy, a calculated decision to maximize leverage and control the narrative? Each possibility is plausible, and each has profound implications for how Harry might respond. From a psychological perspective, this move is fascinating. Meghan, navigating a world she knows is intensely scrutinized, may have calculated that acting independently would give her the upper hand. She could frame the narrative, manage perceptions, and potentially influence decisions without opposition. And in doing so, she forces Harry to confront a situation he may not be prepared for emotionally or strategically. The tension is palpable, personal betrayal intersecting with institutional consequence. Let's not forget the public angle. If news of this meeting were to leak, the optics would be enormous. Meghan, the woman who stepped back from royal life, suddenly re-entering discussions with the king, independently, could be spun in countless ways by media outlets worldwide. Fans and critics alike would interpret the actions through their lenses, fueling speculation, debate, and, inevitably, controversy. Harry, already in the spotlight, would find himself navigating both the personal and public fallout simultaneously. The secrecy of Meghan's alleged move also highlights the delicate balance of power and trust in their relationship. While Harry and Meghan have always been a team publicly, this move underscores the complexities of private decision-making in high-stakes environments. Trust is not just about love, it's about communication, shared objectives, and mutual respect. And in bypassing Harry, Meghan may have inadvertently, or perhaps intentionally, introduced fractures into that trust. It's also important to consider how the king may have perceived the meeting. Charles, as the head of the monarchy, is no stranger to strategy, negotiation, and subtlety. A private conversation with Meghan alone could serve multiple purposes, gauging her intentions, assessing her willingness to reintegrate, or exploring a path that could benefit both parties while maintaining the delicate balance of public image. The interplay between Meghan's goals and Charles's perspective adds a rich layer of intrigue to this unfolding story. As the meeting unfolded, every word, every gesture, and every proposal mattered. Meghan reportedly outlined a plan for reintegration, her terms, her image, and her independence carefully considered. For Harry, learning about this afterward would have been a shock, not just emotionally, but psychologically. To find out that someone you trust may have orchestrated a move with profound implications without your input is a jarring, destabilizing experience. And yet, there's a compelling aspect to Meghan's strategy. From her perspective, she may have believed that acting alone was necessary to protect the narrative, maintain control, and navigate the treacherous waters of public and familial expectation. It's a calculated risk, one that could either restore her influence, create opportunities for reconciliation, or ignite a firestorm of controversy. The emotional impact on Harry cannot be overstated. A mixture of disbelief, hurt, and anger likely washed over him. He may have questioned everything about their partnership, communication, and shared vision for the future. He may have wondered how he could have been kept in the dark about something so consequential. And he may have started considering the next steps carefully: confrontation, strategy, or reflection. But the implications extend beyond personal feelings. Meghan's alleged move touches on the broader narrative of the monarchy itself. Advisors, courtiers, and family members all would have had to recalibrate, considering both the optics and the potential consequences. Every subtle action, every whisper, every decision carries weight in this environment where appearances, tradition, and protocol dominate. In essence, Meghan's secret move was a masterclass in strategy, audacity, and risk. It's a moment that forces reflection on power dynamics, loyalty, and ambition. And for Harry, it's a revelation that not only challenges his personal world but also sets the stage for conflict, drama, and unexpected consequences. But what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. The palace is a world built on appearances, ceremony, and centuries of unspoken rules. Glittering chandeliers, red carpets, and immaculate gardens mask the intricate machinery behind the scenes. A machinery that suddenly found itself in chaos the moment news of Meghan's secret meeting with King Charles broke. For the first time in weeks, whispers turned into urgent conversations, and the calm corridors of Buckingham Palace were replaced with a tense, almost electric energy. Imagine walking into a room where every advisor, aide, and strategist is suddenly alert. Phones buzz incessantly. Notes are passed in hushed tones. Meetings that were scheduled weeks in advance are postponed or canceled. The palace operates like clockwork, but a disruption like this sends every cog spinning. Meghan's meeting wasn't just a personal matter. It was a potential earthquake, and every palace insider knew it. The immediate reaction was one of confusion. How had this meeting gone unnoticed? Who authorized it? Who knew about it? And, most importantly, why wasn't Harry informed? In the palace, communication is key, and secrecy can be dangerous. A single undisclosed move can spark rumors, fuel media speculation, and even affect international perception. Advisors scrambled to assess the fallout, considering everything from public relations to family dynamics. But it wasn't just logistical chaos, it was emotional turmoil. Staff who have dedicated years, even decades, to the monarchy felt the tension. Courtiers whispered in hallways. Senior advisors convened emergency meetings. Everyone understood that the implications extended beyond one couple's private lives. This was about institutional stability, public image, and trust. And all of it was happening while Harry grappled with shock, betrayal, and uncertainty. King Charles himself reportedly faced a dilemma. As head of the family, he had to balance protocol, loyalty, and compassion. Every decision he made would be scrutinized, both inside the palace and in the public eye. Was Meghan's move an opportunity for reconciliation, a strategic misstep, or something in between? Charles had to weigh the consequences of every word, every gesture, and every decision. And for Harry, watching the machinery of the palace respond while feeling blindsided made the emotional weight even heavier. The palace's turmoil also extended to communication teams. In a world where every leak, every statement, and every nuance could become global headlines, managing information is critical. Advisors worked overtime, drafting potential responses, preparing statements, and anticipating media questions. Social media chatter was already beginning to swell, with journalists and royal commentators speculating wildly. Every possibility had to be considered: how the public might react, how the story could be spun, and how to mitigate reputational risk. Meanwhile, internal family dynamics were in flux. The Cambridges, the Queen Consort, and other senior royals were suddenly drawn into discussions that had previously been peripheral. Old alliances and loyalties were tested. Courtiers had to navigate carefully, knowing that any misstep could exacerbate tensions. In a palace built on hierarchy and subtle signaling, Meghan's alleged secret move disrupted the established equilibrium, forcing everyone to reassess their positions and strategies. For Harry, this wasn't just a story he read in the newspapers. It was a reality he lived. He was at the center of the storm, forced to process his emotions while considering the institutional impact. The palace's turmoil mirrored his own inner chaos. Disbelief, hurt, and anger intermingled with a need for strategic thinking. How could he confront Meghan? Should he involve advisors, friends, or family? Could he trust anyone completely? The emotional stakes were as high as the practical ones. And the media frenzy compounded the palace's unrest. Though details of the meeting were largely undisclosed, the rumor mill moved fast. Journalists speculated on motives, timing, and consequences. Headlines hinted at betrayal, secrecy, and royal tension. Public opinion became a battlefield, with fans, critics, and casual observers weighing in, dissecting every statement and reading between the lines. The palace, already reeling, now faced pressure from a world that thrives on speculation and sensationalism. At the heart of it all was the question of intention. Why did Meghan meet with the king alone? Was it about reconciling relationships, asserting independence, or negotiating influence? Advisors debated every possible scenario, weighing risks against opportunities. Each interpretation carried emotional, political, and reputational consequences. And Harry, caught in the middle, had to navigate a maze of conflicting pressures while grappling with his own feelings of betrayal and confusion. The palace's response was multi-layered. Private meetings were held to assess the situation. Contingency plans were drafted. Communication strategies were developed, all with the goal of controlling both narrative and perception. Meanwhile, Harry was left to process his emotions in a landscape that was as institutional as it was personal. It was a storm without precedent, blending family, strategy, and public scrutiny into a single, high-pressure moment. Emotions ran high not just for Harry, but for the entire royal household. Tension crackled through the palace. Old wounds were reopened, and loyalties were tested. Staff who had served the family loyally for decades now had to navigate uncharted territory. Advisors debated, strategists calculated, and every whisper had the potential to spark further turmoil. In the midst of it all, Harry faced the realization that this storm was far larger than one call or one secret meeting. It was a convergence of personal betrayal, institutional pressure, and public spectacle. And yet, despite the chaos, life inside the palace continued. Events were attended, ceremonies conducted, and the public remained largely unaware of the full scope of the internal disruption. The contrast between outward composure and inward turbulence was striking. It underscored the complexity of royal life, a world where appearance often masks intense emotional and strategic maneuvering behind closed doors. But the turbulence was far from over. The palace, the media, and Harry himself were all reacting to the first shockwave. Every new piece of information, every rumor, every interpretation added fuel to the fire. Alliances were being reconsidered, trust was being tested, and the foundations of relationships, both personal and professional, were trembling. The calm that had existed before Meghan's secret move was completely shattered, replaced by a tense, unpredictable, and emotionally charged environment. And for Harry, the storm was just beginning. The palace's turmoil was only a reflection of what he faced personally: feelings of betrayal, confusion, and the daunting task of deciding how to respond. Every step forward had to be measured, every conversation carefully considered. The stakes couldn't be higher. Emotionally, publicly, and institutionally. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Betrayal is a word that cuts deeper when it comes from someone you love. For Prince Harry, discovering that Meghan allegedly met with King Charles behind his back wasn't just a shock, it was a rupture. It shook the very foundations of trust that had held their marriage together through years of unprecedented scrutiny, relentless media pressure, and public speculation. And while the palace may have been navigating protocols and optics, Harry was confronting something far more personal. The feeling that the person closest to him had acted independently in a way that could change everything. Imagine the psychological weight of such a revelation. You spend years building a life with someone, aligning goals, sharing secrets, and planning for the future. Then, almost without warning, you discover that a crucial decision, one with potentially monumental consequences, was made without your knowledge. That's not just surprising, it's destabilizing. It triggers a cascade of emotions: disbelief, anger, confusion, hurt, and even self-doubt. Harry reportedly had to grapple with all of these simultaneously, navigating the personal implications while considering the broader consequences for his family and public image. Betrayal doesn't operate in a vacuum. Its impact is magnified by context. Harry and Meghan's relationship has always existed under the harsh glare of the world's eyes. Every argument, every triumph, every personal milestone has been scrutinized, documented, and debated. To feel betrayed within that environment is a uniquely intense experience. The stakes are higher because there's nowhere to retreat where the betrayal can remain private. Every thought, every reaction, every emotional ripple has the potential to be analyzed publicly, and that amplifies the sense of violation. So what exactly constitutes the betrayal here? It isn't just the act of meeting with King Charles alone. It's the secrecy. It's the deliberate exclusion of Harry from a conversation that could reshape their joint future, affect their family, and influence public perception. The move challenges the very partnership they had built. For Harry, it's a question of trust. Can you rely on someone to act in your shared interest if they are capable of making such significant decisions independently? That question cuts deep because trust is the foundation of any partnership, and especially in a relationship as public, high stakes, and scrutinized as theirs. The betrayal factor is compounded by timing. Meghan's meeting reportedly occurred weeks before Harry learned of it. That window of silence is critical. During those weeks, Harry lived in ignorance while plans, conversations, and negotiations were quietly taking place. That gap magnifies the emotional impact because it turns a single act into a prolonged omission, creating a sense of exclusion and intentionality. The feeling of being left out of decisions that affect one's life is profoundly destabilizing, particularly when those decisions have consequences that reach far beyond the private sphere. Let's consider the broader implications for Harry emotionally. Betrayal triggers a fight-or-flight response. In his case, it's likely a mixture of both. On one hand, there's a desire to confront, to demand explanations, to reassert boundaries. On the other hand, there's a need to reflect, to process, and to determine a strategic response. Emotional intelligence becomes a survival tool in navigating such a high-stakes betrayal. But even the most self-aware individual struggles when the wound comes from someone you love. Now, let's layer in the public factor. Harry's life has never been private. Every personal revelation has public consequences. When betrayal enters the equation, the stakes are magnified exponentially. A personal grievance can quickly become a public spectacle. Every emotional reaction, every decision, and every word could be dissected by the media, public opinion, and social media commentary. The betrayal isn't contained. It reverberates outward, affecting perception, reputation, and relationships both inside and outside the palace. Adding to the complexity is the dynamic with King Charles. This isn't just a betrayal between spouses. It's a triangulated scenario involving Harry, Meghan, and the king. The fact that Meghan allegedly met Charles alone introduces questions of loyalty, alliance, and strategic positioning. Harry must grapple with not only the emotional consequences, but also the relational ones. How does he interpret the king's role in this? Was Charles complicit, supportive, or simply listening? The uncertainty intensifies the sense of betrayal because it multiplies the actors involved and layers additional complexities onto an already fraught emotional landscape. Betrayal also challenges one's perception of identity and partnership. Harry has always been protective of his family, loyal to those he loves, and committed to shared goals. To experience an act of exclusion in such a high-stakes context forces introspection. What does it mean about the relationship? About communication? About mutual respect and commitment? These aren't trivial questions. They cut to the core of personal values, shared priorities, and emotional security. And yet, betrayal is rarely one-dimensional. It often comes with justifications, rationalizations, or differing perspectives. Meghan may have viewed her meeting as strategic, necessary, or even a positive step for their shared future, albeit approached independently. But intention doesn't erase impact. For Harry, the perception of betrayal is as potent as the reality. Feeling sidelined, excluded, or blindsided creates an emotional wound that is difficult to ignore, and in a relationship defined by public scrutiny, the stakes are intensified. Now, imagine the internal dialogue. Harry may have asked himself countless questions in rapid succession. Why wasn't I told? Did she think I couldn't handle the conversation? Was this about control, strategy, or independence? Could I have prevented it if I had known? Each question carries emotional weight. Each answer is elusive, and each reflection adds layers to the turmoil. The betrayal factor isn't a moment. It's a process, a continuous internal negotiation between hurt, trust, and understanding. And then there's the external pressure. Advisors, friends, and family may weigh in, intentionally or not, adding opinions, perspectives, and judgments. Harry must sift through this input while processing his own emotions. Every interpretation is colored by personal experience, biases, and stakes in the situation. Navigating betrayal in isolation is already hard. Doing it under public scrutiny is exponentially harder. The emotional stakes are compounded by Harry's role as a father. How do you process betrayal in a way that protects your children? How do you navigate personal hurt without creating instability for them? The challenge is enormous because the ripple effects extend beyond the marital relationship into the family dynamic, impacting trust, security, and emotional modeling. Ultimately, the betrayal factor is a combination of secrecy, emotional exclusion, timing, and context. It's personal and public, intimate and strategic, private and institutional. Harry is caught in the intersection of all these forces, forced to confront a reality he never expected and must now navigate carefully. Every decision he makes, every word he chooses, and every emotional response will shape not only his own experience, but the broader narrative surrounding Meghan, the monarchy, and the public perception of both. And as the betrayal settles, Harry realizes something critical. This isn't a simple misstep or misunderstanding. This is a turning point. A moment that redefines boundaries, challenges trust, and sets the stage for confrontation, negotiation, and potentially unprecedented consequences within both his marriage and the palace. The personal and institutional storms are converging, and navigating them will require every ounce of emotional resilience, strategic insight, and personal courage Harry possesses. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The moment news of Meghan's secret meeting with King Charles began to surface, whether through whispers, leaks, or speculation, the media world went into overdrive. For Prince Harry, the personal betrayal he was grappling with now collided with the relentless machinery of global journalism, turning a private emotional storm into a public spectacle. The media frenzy wasn't just noise. It was a force that could shape perception, influence narratives, and escalate tensions inside and outside the palace. Imagine waking up to a digital world that is buzzing nonstop. Notifications, headlines, tweets, and commentaries, all dissecting the story, analyzing motives, and speculating on consequences. The media thrives on stories of secrecy, power, and intrigue, and this situation had all three in spades. Meghan meeting with the king alone? That's a headline guaranteed to ignite curiosity, debates, and sometimes outright outrage. Every outlet, from tabloids to mainstream newspapers, was primed to magnify, dramatize, and sensationalize. The frenzy wasn't just about reporting the event, it was about narrative control. Journalists attempted to interpret motivations, predict fallout, and frame the story for maximum engagement. Headlines ranged from shocked disbelief to subtle insinuations, all designed to capture attention. In a 24-hour news cycle, The story spread faster than any official statement could contain it. Social media platforms amplified the chaos. Clips, memes, and speculations circulated widely, with millions offering opinions, judgments, and theories. Harry's personal anguish was now being broadcast to the world, his emotional experience filtered through commentary, analysis, and judgment. The speed and scale of the coverage created unique pressures. For Harry, every reaction he considered had to factor in public perception. Responding too quickly could be seen as defensive. Waiting too long might allow narratives to solidify against him. The media doesn't just report, it shapes reality. Headlines and stories become part of the collective consciousness, influencing how the public, the palace, and even international observers interpret events. Every misstep, every misstatement, every nuance could escalate the story further. The frenzy also intensified scrutiny on Meghan. Every alleged detail of the meeting, every rumored motive, and every potential outcome became fodder for analysis. Her independence, ambition, and strategy were dissected, sometimes unfairly, and often in contradiction to one another. Was she acting alone out of empowerment or manipulation? Was this an olive branch or a strategic maneuver? The media treated both possibilities simultaneously, creating a swirl of confusion, intrigue, and speculation that only compounded Harry's challenges. The palace, too, was under immense pressure. Communications teams scrambled to anticipate leaks, draft potential statements, and manage both domestic and international perception. Advisors weighed every possible media reaction and its potential impact on ongoing relationships within the royal family. They had to act fast, but every action was constrained by protocol, optics, and the unpredictable nature of public interpretation. In this environment, the palace's response had to balance truth, damage control, and emotional sensitivity, a nearly impossible task when personal betrayal is at the heart of the story. Harry's emotional landscape was intertwined with this media storm. He faced betrayal and secrecy on a deeply personal level while simultaneously being scrutinized, judged, and speculated about in real time. Every thought, action, or potential response was amplified, and the combination of personal and public pressure created an almost unbearable tension. For someone who has historically sought privacy and autonomy, the intrusion was overwhelming. The media frenzy was not just about spreading information. It was an emotional battlefield, a test of resilience, and a trial by fire for Harry's capacity to navigate both personal hurt and public expectation. Consider how the media frames such stories: dramatic headlines, emotive language, and calculated pauses designed to keep audiences hooked. Every outlet competes for attention, often prioritizing engagement over nuance. And in this environment, rumors quickly become perceived truths, speculation morphs into assumed facts, and every action or statement is scrutinized with a magnifying glass. For Harry and Meghan, this means living in a constant state of hyper-awareness, with private feelings and personal stakes continually projected onto a global stage. The frenzy also brings a psychological dimension. Constant exposure to speculation, judgment, and public opinion can intensify feelings of betrayal, anger, and isolation. For Harry, who has historically struggled with media intrusion, this environment exacerbates the emotional impact of Meghan's secret move. Every headline and post becomes a reminder of exclusion, secrecy, and the challenges of trust, magnifying the emotional stakes. Strategically, Harry must now consider both response and timing. Should he address the media directly, remain silent, or issue a carefully crafted statement through intermediaries? Each option carries risks. Miscommunication could worsen the narrative, silence could be interpreted as weakness or complicity, and premature disclosure could escalate tensions internally and externally. The media frenzy amplifies every choice, transforming each decision into a high-stakes game where emotional, personal, and institutional factors collide. Meanwhile, public opinion becomes an uncontrollable variable. Fans, critics, and casual observers weigh in, often forming strong judgments based on limited or inaccurate information. Social media debates are particularly unforgiving. Narratives spread rapidly, opinions solidify quickly, and collective assumptions can take on the force of perceived truth. Harry's challenge is not only to navigate his own emotions, but also to anticipate, respond to, and mitigate the ripple effects of a global conversation he did not initiate. The media frenzy also exposes the fragility of information control within the royal ecosystem. Despite centuries of protocol, strategic planning, and secrecy, one undisclosed meeting can trigger worldwide speculation and narrative spirals that are impossible to contain. This situation underscores how personal decisions, even when intended to be private, can become public crises in a hyper-connected world. And for Harry, it highlights a painful irony. While seeking personal autonomy, he is constantly tethered to a public stage that amplifies every betrayal, every secret, and every emotional spike. Emotionally, the media frenzy adds layers to the betrayal Harry feels. Not only was he excluded from the initial meeting, but now the world seems to know, or at least speculate, before he has had the chance to process, respond, or confront. The combination of personal hurt and global attention creates a pressure cooker scenario, where decisions must be made under duress, judgment, and relentless scrutiny. And yet, amid the chaos, there is a clarity of stakes. Every action from this point forward, every conversation with Meghan, every interaction with the palace, every public statement, must account for personal integrity, family loyalty, and public perception. The media frenzy is both an obstacle and a lens, magnifying the consequences of every choice and revealing the complex interplay of emotion, strategy, and public image that defines life at the highest level of scrutiny. The storm is no longer private, it is a global spectacle. And as Harry grapples with betrayal, palace upheaval, and relentless media attention, one truth becomes undeniable: nothing will be the same. Every step, every decision, and every revelation will ripple outward, shaping not only the course of his marriage but the narrative of one of the world's most scrutinized couples. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The moment of confrontation is always a pivotal one. For Harry, it was inevitable. The secrecy, the palace turmoil, and the media frenzy had all created a pressure cooker situation, one where silence was no longer an option. He needed answers, clarity, and a reckoning.